Hello and welcome to the first post-summer Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup Zoom. We are talking today about writing. I was talking earlier in the open about in every job, writing is an essential skill to have. We are joined by Donnique Williams from Fenwick. Fenwick is a studio for uncommonly clear writing and design, which helps companies from Salesforce to Shopify say more with less. If you'd like more power behind your words and to stand out and apart in a competitive time like this is the talk for you. Donnique will provide 15 minutes, a 15-minute talk with tips on how to sharpen your writing skills, and then we'll have a 30-minute Q&A to answer your questions. Donnique, thanks for joining and take it away.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. So I had this little opening slide, and I would encourage anyone who's tuning in online or seeing how things are going, just to do this experiment with some of your writing. And honestly, a lot of the things that I'm going to mention are very practical because again, we have a short amount of time and we're going to talk about a lot of different things. So feel free to take notes, and also we're going to share these with you. So Dennis was mentioning, I'm Donnique Williams. I'm a senior writer strategist at Fenwick, and we write and we design and we make uncommonly clear, really cool, really evocative pieces of writing and design for B2B tech companies, for companies of all shapes and sizes. And we've been doing this for so long that we've decided we wanted to share a bit of that knowledge and some of the things that work for us. So I've condensed as much as I can into kind of 15, 20-ish minutes, if Dennis will be so generous. And we'll talk through those things. And afterwards, I am here for your questions and your comments and your many thoughts. But first, as marketers, as writers, as folks in this space, we are go, go, go all the time. And so I'm so grateful for your time here, and I want us to use it and be still present in it. And so if you would so indulge me, we love at Fenwick to do a breathing exercise, and it's just a way for us to get really grounded in where we are and be present for the time that we have together. So I will lead you through 3 kind of deep breaths. We'll hold when we take the inhale, and we'll hold on the exhale as well. So you want to get nice and comfy. Close your eyes if you feel comfy to do that, and I will take you through. So we're going to start with an inhale on 4 counts. Ready? Deep inhale, pause, 2, 3, 4, slow exhale through the mouth, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, pause, exhale through the mouth, 2, 3, and one more. Inhale, 2, pause, 2, 3, exhale. Awesome. So if you're feeling ready and oxygenated, we will move on. Cool. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about why writing is so difficult, particularly in corporate spaces. The 6 dimensions of writing that are going to help you to clarify that writing and to kind of take away a rubric for clear, concise writing, and some more of our tips on writing telepathy. So ways that you can get into the minds of your customers and the folks that you're writing for to get at that clarity, and then some Q&A. And if we have time, I'll share with you some of writing resources. So why is writing so difficult at work? So many reasons. Firstly, companies aren't real. Like, if I told you to touch Google, how would you even begin to do that? Like, are you going to touch, like, is it your computer? Are you going to go to the Google campus? Like, when you really zoom out, companies are a bunch of adults collectively hallucinating. And it kind of comes from this word corpus, right? We created this body, this fictitious entity that is collectively owned to defray responsibility, to kind of spread it out amongst a lot of people. And so that kind of deferral of responsibility, it really has encroached itself on our language as well. And so you look at that collection of examples: circling wagons, iron in the fire, keeping things above board. These are all idioms and things that we use in like our corporate language to kind of defray responsibility, to obfuscate meaning. And so that when we start to do marketing, we start to talk to our audience, when we talk to one another, all of those confusing ways of speaking and thinking and patterns come through in the writing. And so that makes it difficult, and we face a lot of challenges in doing it. And some of these are even like offensive and outdated. So how do we address those things? Well, firstly, some examples to get more clear on what those are. Workplaces, typically, because of the way they're structured, they encourage euphemism, right? A loss was realized. Whose loss? What loss? There's no subject. There's no responsibility, right? So again, we're getting at that thing that makes it hard, which is this defraying of responsibility. Also, all of us are busy, and often too busy to explain or make people understand what it is we're talking about. So we use all of these acronyms and these terms to this corporate speak to get at things that people don't feel like they have the time to address. And people also like the way it sounds, right? We use these words to show each other, to signal to each other that we know what we're talking about, because we really want to appear like we know what we're talking about, when all that it does is, again, obfuscate meaning. It's not more clear, and it makes the writing and the marketing difficult to understand. And a lot of us have the curse of knowledge. We have been in this industry or in these various industries for a long time, where we're talking to subject matter experts who have been doing this a long time, and we're trying to take these complex things and pull them into, clear language. And it's really hard to do, because our bar for what makes sense is now up there with the jargon and the ornate language, right? And it's really hard to pull yourself down when you are rushed and feeling overwhelmed. There's a lot to think about. So let's break down what is the fundamentals, right? The clear things that you need to make your writing better. Precision. Precise writing is always going to be better than writing that has cliches or words that are ornate but might be ambiguous. So when you're using exact words, when you're establishing a setting, when you're using a subject, right? Something as simple as a subject, right? A loss was realized removes the person, the active individual or company or entity that's doing the thing. We need to be precise in our language. Why does the writing exist? And why should our readers care? That's what precision asks of us, to use our words carefully. The advice being, use a damn subject. Concision, right? Often this is a thing that I feel like people struggle with when they don't have time. So you'll find that you'll write more, and I've had this experience talking to other writers all the time. You'll write more when you have less time, because if you had more time, you could get to concision. You could edit things down. You could find the best words. But when you don't have time, sometimes things balloon. And so here we are. Return to concision. Return to giving yourself, as much as you can, the permission to be concise. Easy to read writing is a gift. It's a gift to your reader. It's a gift to yourself. It requires no special knowledge or lookup. It uses active voice. It defines jargon. It offers context. Assuming that your reader is just going to understand, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And easy to read is always going to be the best default. Evocative, a hard thing to do, but worth it when your writing can engage the senses, can vary structure, can use storytelling devices. Good writing is always good writing, whether it's for B2B or it's for construction and manufacturing. People want to enjoy the thing that they're reading. So how can you vary the sentences pleasantly? How can you create a structure that moves people along your writing? How can you make sure that your headline, subtitles, graphics, captions make the opinion that you're getting across immediately clear? Just so exacting. Evocative writing doesn't necessarily have to be, novelesque, but anything can be evocative if you're intended and you're creative about it. And is your writing helpful? Is it serving its goal? Is it advancing the reader's understanding? All that any of the people reading what you're creating care about is if the thing that they're reading matters to them, right? And we'll get into that when we talk a little bit more about writing telepathy. But part of the doing the thinking to distill the idea is to think about what's helpful for your reader, think about their pain points and what they care about. Again, foundational, but when we don't have it, the thing that you're writing doesn't matter, right? Unless it's helpful, it doesn't really matter to them. And honest. A great example of this, I was writing a strategy for rebranding a publication, an online publication for an organization called VoiceFlow. And they went ahead and told me, we want to make sure that we're really opinionated on the things that we're writing in this publication. And I said, well, what's great is if you decide you want to be really opinionated, but you're afraid of risk, right? What if you're wrong? What if you have a hot take on AI and then, a year down the line, you realize you were wrong about it? How incredibly, interesting would it be for you to come back around to that opinion and say, hey, a year ago we wrote this, we were wrong. And like, here's what we think now. And like, here's what we're doing about that. Like, how much more interesting is a transparent organization that's not afraid of being unique and saying what they think in the moment because they're open to the idea that you could call back to that and say, we've learned and grown, and now we no longer believe that, but look at the progress and the transition. A company and a subject matter expert, a CEO's opinion can change, right? This person can change, this company can change. How incredibly transparent and interesting and unique is that, right? Honesty, citing your sources, avoiding hyperbole, which we love in marketing, right? Everybody's best in class. Everybody's AI powered now, right? It's a gift for you as a writer to be honest with your reader because that's what they want from you. That's what they need. So this is the clear writing rubric. And I would encourage you, screenshot this, use it as a checklist. Rewrite the sentences as, is this precise? Is this concise? Right? This is what we do with everything that goes at the clients. We say, is it hitting these things? And if I'm saying, like it could be a little more concise, I'm going to do a concision edit. I'm going to go back through and I'm going to ask myself, like, is this actually helpful for the reader? Like, am I actually hitting the pain points that we talked about? Am I actually hitting those goals? Do I feel really, really confident that what I'm saying is honest? Like, really no hyperbole, no exaggeration, really honest. So this is what's going to kind of take your writing to the next level. If you already feel like you are very far ahead, this is going to, if that's where you're at, but if you're already feeling like you're very far ahead, you're an advanced writer already, this is going to help you like get in touch again with like the fundamentals and make sure that you're not straying from where you need to be. Writing telepathy. Which is a bit of an exaggeration. So, but indulge me because I'm presenting. A story that I have for this is I wrote a bunch of ebooks for a digital asset management company. And we worked with them over the course of 2 years. So I've written several ebooks over the course of 2 years. And one of the things they mentioned to us in one of our kind of retrospectives was, every time I read something that you have written about our industry, I learned something new about our industry. And that was like, as a writer, that is a huge, incredible amount. Like, that is like, wow, I'm sitting here and I work with a bunch of different clients on many different industries. And to hear that reflected back is such a gift. And that's what you want. Right? Like, you want to be the person who's able to kind of look at this at a bird's eye view, and be able to pull out things that they don't have either the time or the capacity to pull out because they're hiring you, right? They're asking you. So your clients are expecting that of you. And here are some things to think about in that realm to invite that level of like quality in what you're writing. Firstly, you know this, your boss is not your reader, but they still judge your writing. And unfortunately, if your boss's tastes do not match those of your reader, like you have to write for both regardless. And sometimes those tastes don't even overlap. And part of your maneuvering as a marketer, as a writer, is figuring out how to toe that line continually. I do it with clients, and I'm sure you do too. You're also thinking several degrees separated from your boss, right? The electronics manufacturer Philips, they sell toothbrushes to Walgreens, and then they sell that to consumers. Who in that chain are you writing to, right? You have to know who in that chain are you writing to, and then what it is about them that is necessary for you to be aware of in the context of the writing, right? What is your customer thinking? Knowing that, it takes work, it takes exposure. Unless you have been in that person's position, specifically because you had once been a middle management marketer at AI tech company. So you know exactly what that person's pain points are. So you can speak to the way that they think. You can't check in with yourself on every one of these customers. You just can't. No amount of conjecture is as strange as the reality of their lives, right? So, you know, what do? We'll get into that. Another thing to keep in mind is who you're writing for might not be one person. It might be one person who then gets together a buying committee of different teams who are then the ones that have to make that decision, right? They are reading your work and they are advocating towards, upwards for the thing that they want to engage with. But they probably aren't the person who can buy. They need their boss's approval. So how do you create content, create marketing that encapsulates how they engage with the folks above them, with the buying committee around them, and part of that is knowing how those organizations work, right? Knowing how those organizational structures work for your audience so that you can then speak to that. So this is like, you're taking the small myopic view of, one person, and you're saying, how much more context can I build so that when it comes time to write for you, I know exactly what you're thinking. I know exactly what you need, right? This is the circle as it's growing. Also, people spend a lot of time just navigating the internal politics of what they do. So if you can anticipate those needs, like I was saying, you're winning, right? Companies are doing irrational things like spending freezes, and the bigger the company, the more arcane the operation. If you have a concept of that, you can address that. One time we had a client who called us and said, can I park 10 grand with you? Because if I don't, I'm going to lose budget. Right? What even is that? So if you understand the power of the politics, everything that needs to happen in their world, in this case, your customer's world, you can address that, right? This is kind of getting ahead of it. The thing is that is so hard because if you have not occupied that seat of your customer, you can't report from it, right? And this discovery process, it takes work. We have hired excellent writers who cannot write for particular companies because that company or that client, it requires so much personal experience, and they just won't give it. They won't give it to us, right? I have been on freelance projects where I would love to have delegated it, but because I have specific experience in this particular thing, it's really hard to delegate. And so the solution is honestly like hounding your points of contact for research, collecting as many interviews as you can, collecting as much data as you possibly can, and getting in the seat of information. I don't and if you wanted to get more into like the weeds about like how we do that at Fenwick, we can talk about that in the Q&A. But like, for instance, for me, when I was working with a year and a half on a rebrand of a publication, and then actually exacting the articles in that publication, I sat down with an SME in that industry, somebody who I trusted for an hour every single month. And all it was just a slot on his timeline. And I was like, talk to me. Just tell me everything that's on your mind. What are you seeing on LinkedIn? What's the latest memes? Like, just tell me specifics about his industry, right? An hour every single month. And from that hour of him just, talking with me, I could get articles for months. I could be working on articles for months because from that, those seeds of information, things that he's just noodling on, things that he's seeing on the horizon, I can now start building out content around that field of interest. I'm not an expert in that area, but he is. I am the conduit for that expertise. And so I am able to then take that and make it into content. You have to get in the seed information. You have to have the interviews, talk to people. You have to talk to people. You have to do the research yourself a lot of the time, especially if they're not getting back to you. If you can't get in the seed of information, steal it, find it somewhere, right? Because it is so much harder to try to write with nothing. Like, just to be like, cool, I will pull this out of my brain. And even the best writer can't. So grab a seat is my advice for writing to the telepathy. But that brings us to Q&A.
I'm going to volunteer myself to go first, Donnique. First of all, that was fantastic. In 15 minutes, I think the amount of wisdom shared is phenomenal. The question is a related question. Tell us about, so Fenwick has an online writing course. Can you tell us a little bit about that in case anyone is interested?
Yes. I think I have a little slide on it. So we have a few actually. We have 3 tiny free courses. We were running a paid course that was run by an instructor, our CEO, Chris. But we're on a little bit of a hiatus right now. So what we have available are these 3 courses on writing. And one of them is on skills, writing skills. So it would be kind of the skills that we were talking about earlier, those 6 dimensions, but also how to interview incredibly well to get, right? So if I'm telling you, collect those interviews, how do you actually collect them? Like, and how do you ask questions to get SMEs to give you that like really juicy, interesting information? We talk about transforming the transcripts from those interviews into really incredible content, right? That in itself is a skill. The 3 types of editing as we've defined it, which we have a blog post on, but we get into in this one, and deciding how and whether to incorporate edits and how to manage the skills of editing. So that one is on skills. The next one is on habits. We talk about writing habits. Living by your principles, fortifying your writing process, getting unblocked when you are blocked around procrastination. I struggle with this. It has helped me a lot. And trusting your writing instincts. That's tiny course number 2. And then tiny course number 3 is about systems and operations. So if you are leading a content operation and you want to solidify your process as a team, I would suggest sending this. They're very short, they're free, they're little email drip campaigns. You get like an email a week for a few weeks. And this will really help everyone get on the same page around content operations, around research, around blog, branding and narrative market fit, and your content library and how to kind of narrow things down. So there's a lot of like packed wisdom that we've put into those like little email courses. So that will be available as well. I will share those links with Dennis as well. But
Excellent.
yeah.
I just grabbed the link. So the tiny courses, I just put the link in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, they're super great. They're very, very well written. I love them.
Cool. Who has questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or put a question in the chat.
We'll also look at the chat as well.
I have 2 questions. The first one's more of a process question. When let's say you're writing for concision and you're trying to get something out there, and sometimes I find the best way is to leave it overnight and then come back at it fresh. Sometimes you don't have the benefit of overnight because it's due in 45 minutes or shoot, you've got to get it over to another stakeholder. Is there something you do to try and come at something with fresh eyes when you don't have the benefit of time?
Yeah, that's so real. I feel like so many of these are like, I could do this if I had time. The problem is always time, right? Taking a walk, right? Taking a really short walk. I find like I think they've done studies around this on what it does to the brain, especially when you're working in front of a computer all the time. I feel like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, so helpful to kind of create that reset. I find that I need to like be in the sun, and like obviously I live in Canada, that's not always possible, but yeah, taking a step away, I often will get started on a different thing entirely and allow myself to get into a flow state for something else, so that when I come back I do feel like my task switching back, I have a refreshed, perspective. Often also at Fenwick, we have two writers on every single project, because not officially but unofficially. Like I am always edited by somebody else before it goes to the client, and everyone on the team is the same. And I know that that's not always the capacity that everyone has. If you're a freelancer or if you have a small team, but it is so helpful, because sometimes you're staring at something for so long you can't even see it anymore. It helps to have somebody else look at it with fresh eyes if you can. Yeah. Building that time into the process is also a thing too, right?
My second question is related to sort of research. So I'm starting a new role on Monday, so I'm thinking a lot about sort of like how would I interview internal stakeholders and external stakeholders and get started with that. So one of those tiny courses sound great. But if you were, maybe starting a new role, or you may be starting a new project as a freelancer, or starting a new project in your work, is there anything that's top of mind that helps you start getting into the mind of those people, or knowing who you need to get into the mind of first? Like, is there anything that guides that, like as you're trying to eat the elephant on this new project, like what you think about and prioritize?
When I think about and prioritize, it's so different for each project. Um, like today I had a kickoff call with a new old client. We've been working with them on articles, and they finally come back to us and said, "Hey, you've been working on us with articles for so long, one-off little articles. We want you to do strategy." And we're like, "Oh, so exciting, right? You've been eating off the little bits, and now you get to look at the whole picture." But there's so many unknown questions, and so I feel like what I do, instead of being like, okay, I need to get to all of it. How do I get to the strat? Like just taking it off in chunks, like looking at it as and just saying, okay, my first part of this process is the expansion. So like I'm going to collect as much information as I possibly can, and I'm going to spend time brainstorming, and I'm going to get all of the ideas down, and I'm going to grab the data and the interviews and the everything, and that's like the expansion phase. And then once you feel good about the expansion phase, that's when you do the retraction, right? Like it is just expansion and contraction. Now I can take all of those things and I can narrow things, and I can make assessments, and I can analyze, and I can see what's useful. But and then from there, do more expansion as it's useful, right? Just thinking about it as, not that everything needs to happen at the same time, right? Give yourself the time to ask all the questions and not have the answers yet, right? Especially coming into a new role, it's so easy for marketers. I've seen it happen. I've done it, where you go into a new role and you're like, I gotta fix everything. Oh my gosh, it's all broken. But I think that alienates the people you're working with, and it's hard for you because you don't have enough information, right? So spend some time in the collection and the expansion, and be transparent about that, right? You're like, I'm coming into this, I want to know what's going on before I make recommendations, because you hired me to do a good job. You want me to do a good job. So you want me to understand the context before I make. And I think people really respect that, as opposed to somebody who comes in and tries to change everything right away, you know?
And Kristen, congrats on the new role.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
that's really exciting. Congrats.
Other
Other
questions? Feel free to unmute or drop a question in the chat. So Donnique, today you are the instructor, the writing instructor. But if you were to put your student cap on, how do you stay sharp or keep your writing skills sharp? Where do you go?
Ooh, where do I go? Where do I go? I feel like everyone who ends up being a writer was usually started as an avid reader, and at some point you life and work and everything, it is such a joy when I get to read like a truly like breezy and incredible piece of writing, and like engaging with that joy, like doing that, it really brings it back to you. You're like, okay, sometimes when you read something and you're like, wow, I wish I could have written that. Um, yeah, it's a difficult thing. I think for me also, I struggle with procrastination, and part of it is, um, part of it is just like you get a little bit of like there's so much that I have to do that you almost get frozen. Karina Rampelt, who is the managing editor at Fenwick, wrote an incredible article about procrastination, and she wrote it with uh, uh, the metaphor of Kiki's Delivery Service, which is the great animated film, Ghibli film. And so I can share that, but like that honestly is like, if you cannot write, read. If you're finding it hard to read, listen, right? Like move back and back and back until you get to the smallest thing that you can do, the thing that's exciting, and do that. Because the writing is hard because you don't have enough information. And the information gathering is hard because you're not connected to the people you need to. Just keep moving back in that process until you feel like you are unstuck again.
Excellent. We have a question from Floyd in the chat. How much of your work, I'm assuming your work in Fenwick, is in tech, and can you speak to some of the unique challenges there?
Oh my, a lot of our work is in tech. Almost all of it is tech or tech adjacent. And so tech adjacent being, B2B businesses who work with other tech companies, and so to speak. And the unique challenges of tech, honestly, is that things, especially in tech marketing, are moving so quickly all the time. And I feel like marketers are getting really burnt out, and are really, yeah, I think really struggling. So it's a tough place to be as a marketer, I would say, right now, and it has been for the last few years. And so it's actually something that I wrote about. The other thing I wanted to share with you guys today was this article that I wrote about AI in some cases, but like mostly about marketing operations, and what it's like to work in marketing right now, especially in tech, uh, because it's tough. It's really tough, and I think AI has only like exacerbated those issues. And so I would encourage folks who maybe you are in the CMO role, or a CMO who needs to read about like, why is it that there's so much turnover in marketing? Why is there so much turnover in tech? Why is it so hard to find really good people and keep them? That I think is a unique challenge. And I kind of wanted to address that in that article. So would love for you folks to read that and have your reactions to that. Yeah. James also said, how do you make the write-up so engaging without going into too much detail? And I'm not quite sure what that question means in the context of like what the write-up is. Yeah.
Do you want to come off mute to clarify? Or I think I can interpret. I interpreted the question as, I think some of your tips were in engaging writing, and oftentimes it was like being uh, what's the adjective I'm looking for? Not terse, but like being efficient in your words. So I think he's asking, like, if you have to explain a technical concept, how can you be engaging without getting too deep in the weeds of the technology?
So real. Yeah. How do you get in? How do you be engaging? I honestly think that part of being engaging in B2B writing is to steal some advice from B2C, right? Like folks in B2C have an understanding that the marketplace of advertising and product is just deeply saturated, right? People know what good marketing, good advertising, good product looks like. People have, passively or not, an understanding of what they're drawn to. Um, and so I feel like part of it is just engaging with a lot of really good marketing, whether it's B2C or B2B or tech or elsewhere, because the average consumer has an appetite for good, engaging, evocative copy. And I think also you need to get to the point in your knowledge, your level of knowledge about the product or about the industry, that you can understand all of the jargon, you can understand all of the tech, bullshit, so to speak, so that you can then take all of it and say, what is the most concise? What is the most clear? How do I say this? How do you explain it? And I often say this, how do you explain it to your aunt? Right? If you're going to take this sentence, this jargony sentence, and you're going to be like, now explain the product to your aunt, right? You're probably going to use completely different words, right? Putting yourself in that space, because that's what people want to read. That's going to be disruptive, right? Because what they're used to is best in class organizational mechanism bullshit, right? They want to hear clarity. They want to uncommonly clear is uncommon for a reason, because we're not used to hearing it. So I feel like doing that exercise, right? Collecting all of the data, collecting all of the knowledge, doing the expansion phase, and then saying, okay, now I'm ready to contract. Now I'm ready to say, now what do we actually mean? Now what are we actually saying for humans, right? Because hopefully humans are the ones reading and writing this. I mean, increasingly more of the internet is AI, but that's a topic for another day. So yeah. Yeah, another question from James. With AI proliferating into many careers, how to remain relevant and original, and people falsely stating content came from ChatGPT. That's not really a question, but it does bring up for me, a lot of feelings. And I think and Fenwick, we have written some articles about AI, in particular about how to use AI well, because we believe that it's a tool, especially at this point, a tool for expansion and not for thinking, for like extension, but not for original thought. Because again, it is trained on the model of all of our data, but it does not come up with new and interesting ways to speak to those things. So, I mean, to this day, I have not seen a completely AI, generated piece of content that was truly astounding, like remarkable. And if you please prove me wrong, like if there's an article that you know of that has been completely written by ChatGPT, and you're like, this is incredible, like a human could have written this, please share it. I would love to see it. But like first, like off rip from your prompt to what AI gives you, you almost always need some kind of human editor. And yeah, I would be curious if folks are getting more requests from organizations, from your clients, from your internal execs who are asking you to integrate AI into your writing or your marketing process. Because that seems to be the case, is that people really are hoping for the efficiency to come through in marketing. And there is some space for that. And there is some use for that. But I think we're talking about like long form writing, long form content. It is going to be derivative, and it will always need a human editor. So it's a hard thing, I think, to integrate into the content operations, and I don't think anyone has done it quite well yet. I'm open to being wrong though.
So Donnique, I just thought of an idea that I'd like to run by you. So what if we were to take ChatGPT or your favorite Gen AI tool, take your rubric of the 6 rules and paste that in and say, I want my writing to follow this. Then you take the draft that you want to submit to your boss or your client, and you give it to ChatGPT or the tool and say, how do I improve it to follow the rubric? What do you think about that idea?
Ooh, I like that idea. Honestly, this is the thing. I like the idea of you, and I've done this, like taking your article, your thing that you've already created, and saying, hey, I have like 5 headlines. I need like 5 more because my brain is just out of it. But I've written a few. Can you go off of this and make them better? Like, yes, absolutely. AI has given me an opportunity to be like, cool, here's my headlines. Here's 5 more. I'm going to edit those down because some of them are good, some of them are trash. And then I can use that, right? So like I think that like taking your already established thinking, I think the only issue that I have is when you are saying, hey, here's my outline, write it for me, right? It is never going to be as good as a human writer because it is just guessing at the next word. That's what large language models do. And often they do so in a way that feels repetitive and alien, right? The language and the structure of those sentences are often tough. So I think if you can get your draft and you can say, hey, here's my checklist of like clear writing, can you edit this article so that it's more like that? Great, right? And if it does it well, it actually improves the quality even better. Yeah.
Excellent. And we have James with another question. Is long form content still relevant with people's attention span reducing to a few seconds at most?
Yeah. It's interesting. I would be curious if that's true. Like what our attention, I know that like generally it's colloquially a thing we say, like that our attention spans are waning, but I would be curious, like, because, YouTube videos, I've watched 4-hour YouTube videos. So clearly there's an appetite for that. 4-hour YouTube videos with millions of views. And when we're talking about long form written content, The Atlantic still going strong, right? People care a lot about long form news and journalism. People still read that. I think the thing that people are bored of, and this is a thing that we notice in tech and in marketing, people are bored of bad writing. People are bored of reading something that was long and unhelpful, that was long and should have been shorter, right? If it's long form content, let it be long form content because it was packed full of interesting stories, of tightly edited paragraphs, of like evocative writing. You can carry through someone reading something if it's good, right? People know what good writing sounds like, what it reads like, what it looks like. People know if you're talking out of your ass. Like that's the reason why people don't read. This is the reason why B2B marketing in particular struggles, tech marketing struggles, because we know that often this stuff is boring and people don't care. And like, it doesn't have to be. That's the thing. B2B and tech are filled with people. It's stuff. Businesses talking to businesses, but like, it's also people. Everyone you're talking to is just a person on the other line. And so we want to be entertained. We want to be interested. We know what it looks like for good writing to come across our desk. So like, why doesn't our writing sound like that? Because we're not following that rubric, because we're not interested in getting to the point where we understand enough so that we can speak to it really, really, really well, so that we can focus on quality. Yes, Andy, if I am clicking on a link for a recipe, don't give me your life story for 2,000 words before I can see the recipe. That's how it kind of feels when you are, reading tech marketing, marketing in the world. It's like, why does this even exist? Why did you write this? I don't feel like I received anything after. This is the reason why people give up. This is the reason why people drop off the blog posts, because they can tell it's an SEO play and there's nothing to it but that, right? Let there be something to it, please, for all of us.
The ingredients, just give me the ingredients. That's what I say. When I can't find the ingredients, I get so frustrated.
It's so real. Now they have a little button where you can jump to recipe. Click it every time.
Any other questions? All right, going once. All right, well, Donnique, thanks so much for joining us. And we will have more online talks this fall. So check our page for, I think we have another one a week from today. And you can Donnique's LinkedIn handle is there if you would like to reach out to her.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Yes, please add me on LinkedIn. I would love to continue these conversations. And thank you all so much for having me and engaging. And so many lovely compliments in the chat. You guys are so great. I always love coming to this community and chatting with you guys. So would love to come back and connect.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.